Welcome back, everyone. I am joined now by Representative Ashley Hinson. She represents Iowa's 2nd District. Thank you so much for being here today.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
I want to talk to you first about President Trump taking office just about a month ago. Since then, I feel like we have seen the country move in sort of fast forward type of motion with things like the executive orders, tariffs, the Department of Government Efficiency rolling things out. As a member of Congress, what is your read on all of what has transpired?
Well, it's certainly been a flurry of activity the past couple of weeks. I'm very proud of President Trump and the work he's been able to do in the first couple of weeks in office. Yeah, less than 30 days, and he's accomplished a lot. I mean, DOGE is already saving taxpayers about $1 billion a day, and we all knew that there was a lot of government waste and fraud, and the fact that they're able to uncover a lot of that and do that in such an expedited fashion, I think is really important. As someone who is an appropriator, I serve on the committee that writes the checks and funds agencies. I think it's important we're respecting taxpayer dollars, and so I'm excited to be able to work with President Trump and his new administration to make sure we're finding those savings for taxpayers as much as we can.
Do you think there is a part on the American public where maybe they see all of this happening and there is a fear of what exactly is unfolding? Are they going to be affected? Do you see that playing out, or have you heard concerns from your constituents?
Yeah. Well, I would say to anybody watching who is sending your taxpayer dollars in or getting ready to write your check to the federal government, know that we are watching your taxpayer dollars like a hawk. That's the first thing I would say. And number two, if you're concerned, call our offices, right? We want to dispel any myths or rumors or misinformation that's out there about these programs and what we're trying to do. I don't think we should be funding DEI ballets or transgender operas in other countries. We should be focused on making sure we can provide benefits that they need to the American people, and that's what the intent is here, is rooting through all those unnecessary expenditures. I want to see us do that in a targeted way, maybe less of a sledgehammer and more of a scalpel approach, but that is certainly what I'm trying to do on Iowans' behalf, and so just please call us if you're concerned.
Okay. With farmers in particular and the dismantling of USAID and the tariffs, what is this impact going to look like?
Well, I think specific to tariffs, we need to make sure that we have a level playing field. That's something farmers have been talking to us about, especially the last 4 years where we haven't had a whole lot of focus under the Biden administration on trade. So I think it's part of that conversation. We need to make sure we have all the tools we can have in a toolbox to be able to kind of pull those economic levers and get people to the table. I think that's what President Trump is trying to do with tariffs. Anybody who's had concerns, we've been working with them specific to USDA kind of funding freezes and things like that. We've been directly interfacing with USDA, and our understanding is the good programs that maybe are on pause right now, they're going to move forward. So new USDA secretary, we're trying to just make sure we're being very deliberate in everything that's going on.
Have you heard from farmers yet about any of this? Anybody with concerns that is reaching out to you?
Certainly there are people. I think it goes to what you asked earlier about, okay, this information's happening and things are moving quickly. So again, people who are concerned, please just reach out to us. We want to make sure we're doing the right casework, we're documenting your concerns, and then make sure that I have the tools necessary to be able to go out and be your advocate on your behalf.
Switching gears, I want to talk about some legislation that you introduced in January. It is called the Swamp Act. So I'll just have you explain what it is, and then maybe if you see any potential benefit to Iowa.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. The whole intent of that is, DC is just so much government and so much bureaucracy, and a lot of times those folks don't have the pulse like they need to on the people that they're directly serving. So I look at an agency like Department of Agriculture. It could be headquartered right here in Iowa, where they're more likely to interface and interact with the people who utilize their services every single day. So it makes a lot of sense for an agency like that not to be in DC with all that bureaucracy, passing down rules and regulations that don't make a whole lot of sense. A lot of those people have never stepped foot on a family farm. So I think that's the intent of that. Senator Ernst introduced the companion bill in the Senate. People seem to be supportive of it. It's bipartisan. I introduced it with Representative Golden from Maine, and we're hopeful we're able to get some movement there.
I was just going to ask if you had sensed the traction on this, and if you sense that it is going to move forward, and if so, would there be any sort of timeline we could be looking at?
Well, certainly, I mean, having a bipartisan co-sponsor helps bills to move, right? Sure. Especially in our climate today, when you don't hear about a whole lot of bipartisan work happening. It does still happen. But what I think is important is, as we're having these bigger conversations about efficiencies, I think this could be a good partner to that, right? If we're looking at DOGE and cutting government waste and bureaucracy, rent's cheaper in Iowa than it is in DC. We have a lot of commercial office space available, so this could be a win-win to save taxpayers money and find efficiencies as well.
All right, Representative Hinson, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Amanda.
We'll be right back.